everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Play along on our epic quest to research and review all 250 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro catalog. Today we'll be floating and flapping through two Super Nintendo games, Kirby Super Star and Kirby's Dream Land 3, in an episode that we are calling Kirb'etizers. Joining us on this ongoing feast of Kirby titles is the returning friend of the show, Derick McDuff from the Underrated Movie Podcast. How you doing, Derick?
Hey, I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you for coming back and being patient with us. And you know what, Derick, Kirby, it's all about, friendship and working together and helpers and stuff. I think you got a helper for us today, don't you?
I was going to say, yeah, I brought a player too, and that would be a good friend of mine, Kurosh Jozavi. Kurosh, welcome to the show, I guess. I've never introduced anyone to a show that's not mine, but come on in.
Adding it to the titles that Derick has with me. He's had me on all these different things. He's now brought me in here, snuck me in as player two. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. I'm the host of the KJP Show on my YouTube show where we celebrate and elevate indie games and game developers. And so thanks again. Yeah, this is great. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
Mike and I first saw you as a panelist at this year's WonderCon.
Oh,
we were there with Derick.
Cool.
And I was just curious how you guys met each other, and how this friendship started, the Kurosh Derick team up.
The DK crew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the leader of the bunch?
Derick, would you like to provide the synopsis?
Yeah, so I mean, speaking of WonderCon, we actually, at the year before that WonderCon, I was seeing a mutual friend of ours, Jason JPG's panel, and one of the panelists was Kurosh. And at the time, I was like doing, because I have my Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones podcast, and I was like, all right, I'm about to release my April Fool's Day episode on Morbius. I need to find someone at this convention who's going to talk Morbius with me. And I was like asking a few people, and I was like, hey, anybody interested? And Kurosh was like, me, please, yes, I would like to talk Morbius. Since then, we've been more buddies.
I gotta know, though, Mike, have you seen Morbius?
Yes, I watched it on a plane, which I think worked to its favor.
Aren't you and I defenders of that movie? I feel like you enjoyed it.
I did?
Right.
I don't know why I made that a question, but
Morbius.
You're like, wait, did I? Is hindsight 2020? I don't know.
But Derick, Kurosh, did you guys join in hating it, or are you like Mike and I, were like, you can kind of appreciate it for the dumpster fire it is?
We were kind of like, it's a so bad it's good. I mean, definitely, at least I don't want to speak for you. I thought it was a so bad it's good movie.
Yeah.
I definitely find those sorts of films where they fit in that kind of space and how most people describe it as a very valuable space. I very much have a lot of movies in that kind of category where I enjoy them, but for not the same reasons I enjoy, Kingdom of Heaven, for instance. But I very much, I get a kick out of it. It was a good time. I went in with going in expecting what I got, and I was not disappointed. So it was fun. Yeah, at the panel, I remember we were there. That was my first panel that I got to submit and got accepted the last year. And I remember afterwards, Derick and I connected, and I think we were just like talking, and we're just like, oh, you're into this, you're into that. What do you do? And I think like the way you brought it up was like not even a seeking, like the way you painted is like you were seeking out. It was just like, I'm doing all this stuff. I got some ideas coming up for this idea. If you know anyone, or if you can. And I was like, dude, you're like, is this scripted? Is this someone like pranking me? I wanted to do this so bad.
That's Derick's superpower. He hosts the Underrated Movie Podcast, and I'm going through his backlog. And like, Derick, you have so many episodes on movies that I literally thought I was the only person who appreciated it in the world.
100% that.
And then and then Kurosh, you hitting the indie developers on your KJP show. You guys are both just shining light where it needs to be shown.
100%. Yeah, there's not enough conversations about the game developer space, and then also just there's indie games made by like people in like just doing things out of their garages and stuff, and or families and stuff, and so I love seeing that stuff. And I feel like if you look at any of those developers, like the ones that made Hollow Knight or Stardew, it was a couple of just individuals, but they were able to go and hit the stratosphere with that stuff. And at any moment, like it's just a matter of finding it, like with how many games there are out there. So,
Well, if Silk Song ever gets released, we'll have to have you back.
oh my god,
Balatro, I thought was like a one-man show too.
yeah, Balatro was amazing. That took up a lot of my time earlier this year.
That is
I'm-
still taking up my time.
It takes Balata time. Balatra. Okay. Well, all that sounds NE excellent. I think we're ready to dive into our first game for today, though. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So we're going to start with Kirby Super Star on the SNES, released in 1994. I will start by reading the description on Nintendo Switch Online. It says, "That awful King DDD is at it again. He's stolen all the food in Dreamland. It's up to Kirby to get it back and ultimately save Popstar from being taken over. Our round pink hero will have to journey through 6 main games and 2 mini games, finishing with the ultimate showdown in the arena. Each game offers its own story and variation of platforming action, as well as unique environments and an assortment of enemies. Swallowing an enemy allows Kirby to copy the abilities of that enemy, granting him the power to perform special attacks and giving him a new hat to don." I love when people use the word don as a verb. Kirby can also give up an acquired ability and use it to create a helper. The helper will follow Kirby around and automatically fight as his ally, or offer a second player the chance to join in the game by controlling it. There's never a dull moment as Kirby dashes, flies, and fights. Heck yeah, Kirby Superstar. We're going to get into it. Let's go ahead and first discuss the box art, because that's often people's first impressions on the game, seeing it sitting there on the store shelves in the 90s in this case. Kurosh, you're our Kirby enthusiast, self-described Kirby enthusiast. Any thoughts on the cover of this game?
I remember as a kid, it had a strong impression of me, and now I've like looked back on it with a sense of like, what was that perspective? And it still resonates, I think, with the same kind of awe. It is very much. I'm also a big pro wrestling fan, and I think what it captures for me, that's the through line, is the gold. It's very. It gives this allure of just prestige, like the stuff around behind him, the emblem behind Kirby himself, and the Kirby Superstar emblem feels like a world heavyweight title, like centerpiece.
Absolutely.
It just drew me in from that. I was like, okay, this is regal, this is prestige, this is high level Kirby. And that, yeah, this was the first Kirby game that ever drew me in as a young kid, and it was largely from the box art that grabbed me.
Yeah, it's basically Kirby is, I'm not gonna say dead center, but pretty much the focal point of the cover. It's him with his beam wand. He's got the beam ability. And it says Kirby Superstar. He's kind of in the center of the logo. And as Kurosh said, there's kind of like this medallion or like belt. It's some kind of like prize trophy sort of emblem behind him. And then I remember as a kid, the 8 games in one. I was like, 8? 8? That's like, no way. Because, I was a Genesis kid. I was a Sega kid. I would seethe with jealousy at Super Nintendo. But the one thing I had over them was the Sega 6-pack. Sega came. Remember the 6-pack, Kurosh?
I love the 6-pack. Yeah, I was always jealous of my friends. I was the reverse. I didn't have Super Nintendo, but I had friends that had Super Nintendo. And then whenever we met someone that had the Sega Genesis, I was like, "What do you got? What is this?"
Yeah.
And yeah, I was jealous of that.
And it's just bangers of games on there. It's the original Sonic, it's Streets of Rage, Golden Axe. So I would, puff out my chest on 6-pack pride, and then I'd be like, "Oh no, 8." Like Super Nintendo has done it again.
They've upped the game.
Yeah.
the escalation, the wars.
I have a bone to pick with this cover, and you're going to complain about it. I know you will. So the whole thing, 8 games in one, and really it's 6 like single player games and then 2 that are sort of more multiplayer.
Yeah, 7 single player.
So is it more the gripe that it's what the types of games are, or how they're portrayed?
Yeah, what's your gripe?
My gripe is that this says 8 games in one, and I feel like this is right there, but there's 7 stars on here.
I was about to say, yeah. Yeah, what if the 8th star is Kirby?
Oh.
Yeah.
The 8th star is the friends we made along the way.
You're the 8th star.
Yeah, the 8th star was you all along.
The 8th star was inside of us. We never knew.
The 8th star is you is really actually, or that Kirby is the star.
He is a superstar.
I'm not giving them this one. That you can do this interpretation. I refuse to believe that's what they had in mind.
Hey, Mike, you ready to go to school? I'm a teacher, if you guys didn't know. I know where the 8th star is, and so do you. It's in the corner that the Only for Nintendo tore off.
Oh,
The top corner is ripped and it says Only for Nintendo. And I'm willing to bet, Mike, because that's what it always looked like on Super Nintendo exclusives. There probably was the 8th star that got covered up by that thing. Don't you think?
I feel like that's a stronger argument, but what about the 2 stars that are visible to his left and right?
That's what I was thinking. But then I was like, that makes it 9, and that's too many.
There are 9.
How are they?
Oh.
Yes, because one of them's hidden. The 9th game is the arena mode. I can show you a screen if you guys don't believe me. You want to count?
I believe you. I just was like, I did not get that far.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, the arena. I forgot about. Okay.
Wait, did the arena count as... Wait, so did the arena count as single player or also multiplayer?
Either.
Wait.
We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. So
Is it no player? That's just a movie.
Before we go to the next thing, I do want to say something about the 8 games in one real quick.
Yeah.
For me, I remember at the same time or around the same time as this, the Mario All-Star Pack. That was the other thing that was like really selling me on like multi-pack kind of first party IP, I guess, without realizing it. But it was just like these collections of your favorite hero or whatever. Like it just drew me in. Whether in that case, to me, like I look back and I'm like, that wasn't necessarily my favorite in the Mario franchise by a long shot, but the appeal was drawn to me largely by it just being like this large collection of in a similar vein as what this was trying to do. And I thought that was interesting.
Well, and what's neat about that is that the game was directed by Masahiro Sakurai, or Daddy Sakurai, as he's known in the Smash Brothers fandom. And he had been noticing a trend in gaming that games were getting longer and that they were taking up more time. And so he wanted to make this game seem like had value. He also noticed that, did I say longer and more time? I meant the game, he knows the games are longer and more expensive. That makes more sense. Yes, longer and more time. Not wrong, but just not necessary.
Just doubly emphasized.
Just a little bit redundant, but that's cool.
But so since games were requiring a lot of time and money, he wanted to create one cartridge that had a lot of value and also was accessible in small bites so that it wouldn't consume someone's entire day. And so he split it up into what's called omnibus format, where the game is sliced up into 8, or as it's actually 9 different chunks. And what I thought was really cool is, have you guys seen the Japanese box? I know I showed it on the screen earlier. Have you seen this before today?
No,
I have not. That's cool with like the wood burning or whatever.
It's so cool. In Japan, it was released in what's called a wooden Polonia box, which is traditionally used as packaging for expensive sake or high-quality silverware.
Oh.
And producer Shigesato Itoi thought it conveyed the game had a special quality and was rich in value.
Wait, so this was like wood?
Yeah, like
Okay.
wood. Isn't that rad?
That's insane.
That is awesome.
I was gonna say we used to be a pauper country, but that wasn't even us. That was Japan. So
And this is all according to the Kirby 20th Anniversary Collection Celebration book that was released in 2012. If you guys like that, I got some other fun trivia for you in our Knowledge is Nintendo Power section.
Yeah, later.
So like I said, it was directed by Masahiro Sakurai, who is the Smash Brothers director and the mastermind behind that series.
The true master hand, if you want to say.
Yes, you're right. The final boss of Smash Brothers probably is his hand, right?
Right. His 2 hands. He's got the regular hand, the master hand, and then the crazy hand.
The lead developer was Shigeru Miyamoto, who we all know from the Mario series, and the late great Satoru Iwata, who worked previously on Kirby's Adventure. And so I just thought it was kind of cool. It's like kind of the holy trinity of Nintendo developers. Although, admittedly, Satoru, if I'm saying that name right, his input was apparently, pretty limited. But still thought that was kind of neat. All of them in one office making this game together must have been pretty cool.
Power, wisdom, and courage.
Yeah, exactly. So, in addition to the 9 game modes, 3 of which must be unlocked, there was an additional horror-themed game called Kagero Mansion, in which Kirby would be placed under a curse by an evil clock, and it would seal his mouth shut. So kind of like Deadpool from the X-Men Origins movie. Imagine Kirby without his mouth, right?
I have no mouth and I must suck.
That's a different movie. Yeah.
Hey,
So it was
some of
dropped.
those tabs you had open.
Kagero Mansion. Keep it classy, Mike. Keep it classy.
Hey, mine was a literary reference. Where you took that is on you.
Kagero Mansion was cut before coding began, and the only known piece of cover art is this single drawing of a candle. which apparently would have given him his fire powers because you would have to get your powers from the mansion itself, which is another cool idea, you know?
Interesting. I always feel like the Kirby games would always experiment. I mean, throughout their timeline and stuff beyond this, but you just always see interesting and weird, eccentric ideas being toyed around with their franchise primarily. And I feel like this one, maybe the judgment call was kind of like, I'd imagine the conference room meeting and proposition of it being like, this is might be a little too much. Like,
Yeah.
like at what point then, like, yeah, I think it with the intended audience and stuff. So I'm curious though if they were to ever. I feel like I wouldn't put it past Nintendo to ever reapproach this idea in a future point.
This may be a dev world question, but why on earth is the only thing we have of this concept art of a candle? Like, when it's like, I can't imagine anyone being like, I understand the Kirby with no mouth and all this stuff. What I don't get is what the heck's a candle? Like, this feels like a weird focus point.
I don't know if you guys have ever covered this, but I feel like, from my understanding and what I've seen reported on, is just the Nintendo culture of archiving and keeping the historical records. It's very private, and they're not as, I think, open or transparent about things that they don't use, for instance. And there was like a major leak at one point, and that was a big conversation point of it, of like, is this in any other game studio or any other space? It's kind of looked as commonplace, I guess, to talk about unused ideas or unused concepts. But I think it's something about Nintendo development culture or philosophy.
So more like the idea like this got out because this was so inconsequential to the concepts.
Either that or they were very specific, like we're okay sharing this. I think either of those two would be.
Which is that same kind of realm where that's so little to the more unique elements that they're like, yeah, we'll give this as a bit because it's from it, but it doesn't give anything away really.
And I mean, I don't know if I'm reading into it too much because I just like, it let my imagination run wild. But it's like Mike said, it's just a drawing of a candle, but like it's got like an illumination aspect, which implies to me that there was going to be like dark areas of the horror themed Kirby game. So maybe it was just visual reference, maybe it was exploring a gameplay thing we don't fully understand. But I thought that would be interesting. And then fans of Sakurai might be interested to know that his identity is present in this game in more than just the design. The logo on the game mode select that says Samurai Kirby is his actual handwriting.
Oh,
that's cool.
He actually wrote Samurai Kirby by hand, and then they took it and they pixel by pixel recreated it. But that's only the second coolest one. By far the coolest one is that when Kirby gets the Mike superpower, which has been a through line through the first few Kirby games Mike and I have played together. So he gets 3 attacks, and every time he screams into his microphone, all the enemies on screen get blown up. It's super cool. Do you recall what the third attack sounds like?
I was playing most of my time like in public spaces, so I had my volume down when I was doing my replay through.
Kirby's third attack, he goes, which in Japanese is slang for "let's go," and that is Sakurai's actual voice saying "Chesto."
Oh, no way!
And then warped to sound like some big epic like punk rocker. Wasn't that cool though, Kurosh?
That's wild. Yeah.
And that was that was actually in a interview conducted in 2017 by Akinori Sao. I'm trying my best on the names, but we'll put it in the show notes if anyone wants to read about it because it's super, super cool.
Again, I feel like that hammers home to me the points of like how they approached Kirby games and how HAL Laboratories development studio, the laboratory aspect seems very heavily emphasized of like, this is just a weird space for any kind of wacky ideas to be implemented, to be tossed around, to be done with. I find that really cool and interesting.
I agree. I would love to be a fly on the wall that speaks Japanese.
I know, right?
Been really cool to be there in the 90s. So I thought we could kind of go through the different types of games in Kirby Superstar. So there are 9 total games to choose from.
Mhm.
So we're going to start with the discussion of the traditional Kirby side-scrolling adventure games. And that starts with Spring Breeze, which Mike might have noticed is a remake of the very first Kirby game. Did you notice that, Mike?
I mean, all of them feel very similar, so I didn't notice it as an exact remake, but it was like it does end with like him inflating and stealing a castle, and that's you don't forget that.
Right. So it's traditional Kirby gameplay. You're sucking up enemies, stealing their powers, and at the end of every stage, you're fighting the boss. And so it once again ends with a showdown against King DDD with some cool Mario cameos this time. We got Mario and Luigi rooting on.
And you got Toad.
And Birdo giving, I know, keep it classy, Mike, but Birdo's giving like bedroom eyes for most of her cameos in this game.
Is it bedroom eyes or is it like bombastic side-eye vibes? Like,
Is there a difference?
I mean, there's you can read a lot into tone. You can read it like subtext, like the way she's looking at Kirby in the image you're showing right now,
Yeah.
as Kirby's beating Day. It's like, I don't know. I get like there's something like malicious, like plotting in her mind.
I'm just imagining it has more a tone like I wanted to go to Cirque du Soleil.
yeah, I get that. That's a very accurate way of it.
So this is the same background in stuff that we'd see in the Megaton thing we'll get to.
The same sprites for the background characters. They're like in an outdoor arena in that one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show you, Mike, is that it added some context that makes a lot more sense. So Mike had this snarky joke at the end of Kirby's Dreamland, in which it's like, okay, you've liberated the castle. Where are you taking the castle? Because presumably that was there before King DD invaded Dreamland. So why is he moving the castle? Shouldn't the people who were there just be allowed to come back?
Well, Kirby is a benevolent god, and he reigns supreme and chooses at whim what he passes on into the kingdoms. It's not like Mario where he's a servant of the people. He's very much like, I operate on my own terms.
Does Kirby look like a guy with a plan?
It's funny though, you mentioned like he is rather godlike, and that's kind of the gameplay because you have so many abilities. But Mike, are you noticing the context that the remake here has added?
Yeah, so it looks like in the remake they bothered to animate the food falling from the castle.
And here's what's wild. I replayed the end of Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, and that was still there. You and I just both forgot about it. But in the original, you can clearly see the food. The difference is that it's framed differently, so you don't see the food and Kirby at the same time. And so our brain just Berenstain bared this thing and just, oh, Kirby's stealing the castle. No, he's very clearly redistributing all the food that King DD has taken away.
It's a redistribution of wealth. It's a pink revolution.
Kirby is a very much a political figure in this landscape. It's interesting how his socioeconomic like views get kind of portrayed.
He's a pinko in more ways than one.
I think he could still distribute it without taking the castle.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, how it's executed. Derick, I wanted to get your opinion on this because I only know you as like a movie guy. What's kind of your take on the Kirby gameplay? Like we know Kurosh loves it. Mike and I like it from the last episode. What's your kind of stance on Kirby gameplay?
I mean, I really like Kirby gameplay. I like the platforming elements of it. I actually didn't come to Kirby until after this. The first Kirby game I played was Crystal Shards.
Same.
And then I played a lot of the ones on the DS and the Game Boy. So it was interesting going back. It was like, oh, this is like the Kirby origin for me.
The Kirby of old.
Right. So it was, I'm a big Kirby fan, but I wasn't familiar with either of these games necessarily.
The same too. Yeah. I think there's a solid swath of people who were more like N64 kids.
Yeah.
And so Crystal Shards would have been like, your first one.
What was crazy to me though was even though this was like it was my first kind of impression of Kirby, I my first proper like the first time I owned a Kirby game or rented a Kirby game was Crystal Shards as well. What really was like kind of like perplexing to me, besides the 8-in-1 kind of thing, was this idea that it wasn't just 8 kind of, I don't know how to describe it, like it wasn't 8 games of the same sort of nature. It was in a large way. It was like they were playing with a variety of different game modes or genres in a way. And I don't want to go too far ahead, but like that blew my mind in a way where one game can do different things. Now, some of them aren't as much of a deviation, but others were very much like a strong deviation of like what the typical side-scrolling elements were. And like that laid in my head. And like I look at it now, like when we were reflecting and playing on this, and I look at my taste in games and I'm like, whenever I see a game like Nier Automata, for instance, or games where they kind of play with a couple of different genres throughout the course of the story or the narrative that they're portraying, I kind of look back at this. I'm like, was this the reason I found that interesting? Was this the canon event that got me into that? So it's interesting.
I think Sakurai is an innovator, I mean, right off the bat, the joy pros of this game is just the ingenuity of, like you said, you have this 2D side-scrolling game, we can create multiple games out of that same engine. And just by changing the goal of a level, now it feels different. And yeah, they're not all super, different. I'll say one of the Joy Cons is that Spring Breeze and Dynablade, they feel very similar. Dynablade is the second game, but it's still 2D Kirby gameplay. The only real difference is that now you have an overmap, a la like Super Mario 3.
Yeah.
And so you can pick levels at your whim, and you can also unlock branching paths into bonus levels. It's not really that different gameplay wise. And so I'm curious to your take on this. In my research, I found out that Spring Breeze, it was named actually because the first Kirby's Dream Land describes in the Japanese manual that Kirby is a young boy who blew into town on the Spring Breeze. And I was like, I like that. But in the initial concept, the Spring Breeze game, Kirby would not be able to absorb enemies or create helpers.
Oh.
It was going to be the first Kirby's Dream Land gameplay of just sucking up enemies and spitting them back at each other. And then Dynablade would be the game that adds the abilities. So you're kind of learning all the abilities as you go, but they ultimately decided, to not go that way. I kind of wish they kept it that way. I think that would have been sort of novel.
Yeah, because that would be more of a throwback to the first Kirby too, when he was just like, he wasn't even pink in that first game. Like they could have even really gone further and just made it like a black and white game, like black and white, like strip it down, like because I do say I will kind of agree that is one of the jumping the gun here, but that is one of the Joy Cons for me. It's like is it 8 games or is it like 5 games?
Yeah, Revenge of the Meta Knight is another one that is very similar, but it's kind of just the storytelling of it. So between every level, as you're fighting Meta Knight here, you get the chance to take down his halberd, which is his flying warship. And you're going after different parts of it, and you're taking down the reactor, and you're taking down the engines, and you're taking down this and that. And like the enemy crew is taunting you. Like you'll never escape, or oh, he's in the reactor room. What are we gonna do? Like it's cinematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there is a level of like you mentioned cinematic as a descriptor. There is a few elements just in the way that the game modes were laid out in the artwork for this game as a whole that it kind of gave me like movie poster kind of like flyer vibes to it, and just the presentation was of a different ilk that I had seen before. That was something that drew me in, was its approach at that stage of like back in Super Nintendo days. You didn't see that as often.
Yeah.
Besides maybe the box art. Like that was the closest you would get to some of them.
And then Revenge of Meta Knight also has the short level and then boss fight that is now a like 2D space shooter.
I love this one so much.
Yeah.
Right?
This one, like I was playing this around the same time I was watching my VHS copy of the episode 6. And so this just background that you have showcasing like that the backdrop of like the core reactor and everything very much gave me like Death Star interior vibes, and like you're in the core space and stuff, and I was like
Lando's gonna fly in and like
him
and
Yub Nub are just in there just like
no, I was trying to think of his name. Yub Nub is like the little the summons you have, your second player or whatever, the little glob.
That's Neon Numb. Yub Nub is the Ewok song at the end of the movie.
Oh my God, Mike.
For the 2 people we have who do not follow this, we are talking Star Wars now. We went straight to episode 6 with the presumption that everybody will know that this is Star Wars.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wasn't episode 6 of our show the Kirby episode, Mike? Like, I'm pretty sure it was.
Was this all planned?
All right, so let me give you my hot take. I didn't include it because I didn't want to get necessarily too negative. Does Revenge of the Meta Knight owe something to Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Because the whole airship thing and some of the assets are very similar. Like there's little platforms that if Kirby steps on it, it like kind of launches him like it's a jet taking off, and that's straight out of the airship from Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
I mean, that's straight off of like
airships.
Yeah, like that's a thing.
All right.
And there was a big, conversation from game developers back then about airship usage and mechanics, and I think there was a lot of common knowledge shared. I'm just
all right.
The 90s were a second golden age that airships had not seen since the Hindenburg.
The last game in the sort of anthology is Milky Way Wishes, and it's really interesting because you kind of play through the levels again as you're clearing this overworld map. You're going from planet to planet, kind of like Star Fox 2, actually, Mike.
Yeah.
And, you go to this planet and conquer it, and go this planet and conquer it. And the whole premise is that you are trying to get this ability to get your Dragon Balls. You're collecting Dragon Balls. Once you get them all, you can make one pure wish that will, make the sun and moon stop fighting, which is such a cool callback to Mr. Bright and Miss Shine or whatever the names are, the fighting sun and moon. And you will fight alternate versions of bosses. So now like it's the iconic Wispy Woods tree, which starts every Kirby game, but now you're flanked by them. There's two of them.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of cool and epic.
This is getting out of control.
And what
Now are there two of them?
And so hypothetically, the way that this unlocks is from beating the Revenge of Meta Knight one.
Correct. Yeah, so let's go over this. I see where Mike is going with this because we like to celebrate any one of us that have beaten a game with a fun little sound effect. So, Mike, we'll start with you since you mentioned it first. What are we considering beating Kirby Superstar? Do you need to beat Milky Way Wishes, or do you need to also then do the arena that unlocks?
I mean, I saw credits. Does that count, or does that not count because that was in
I usually go by credits personally.
Spring Breeze ended with credits.
Right, that's every game has credits at the end, so we can't count credits.
No, I don't think I saw credits on some of them that I thought I did beat, but I did not beat all of these.
Okay, okay. Did you beat Milky Way Wishes?
No, I didn't. I did not reach Milky Way Wishes.
Okay.
Because I wasn't. So it has. You start off with 4 of the very single player ones unlocked and 2 that have to get unlocked. And it was not clear to me what was unlocking things. And there was a lot of stuff to go through. And not all of them were fun. And so not knowing what I needed to do to unlock it, I kind of just accepted that it would remain locked because it's been a month. So
any idea out of the 9 how many you did end up beating or rolling credits, or what do you want to call it?
I am going to say that arguably 5-ish.
All right, it's not bad.
Of the single player things, 3 of them.
Derick, have you beaten this game?
I have not. I
Oh.
must admit,
Oh,
I did
no.
not get all the way through it.
Well, I'm going to go me next because it's not that impressive. I do use rewinding and save states, although I didn't have to do it too much with these games, but I, NintenDON'T, did beat this game.
Oh.
Family computer.
Kurosh, I'm willing to guess you've beaten this game.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this. I've beaten this game in the past.
It's fine.
When I played through this time, what I did was, because it was jogging my memory, I went through the 4 base ones: the Gourmet, the Spring Breeze, the Dino Blade, and the offensive one, the cave cart one. And then I finished Revenge of the Meta Knight, and then when I was doing Milky Way, I was like, I remember Milky Way. I'm good with Milky Way.
Yeah.
And I just experienced some of it, and then that was like the gist of it. I played around with some of the multiplayer stuff a little bit, but
We will count the past as also counted.
Yes.
yeah, this is one of my favorites.
So you, NintenDON'T, did beat this in the past.
Family computer.
Making me look bad as always.
That's all. What are you talking about?
I'm glad that at least half of us can speak to the entirety of the game, though. But so Milky Way Wishes being the last game in the collection is really interesting because I think this is the only time I've ever encountered this. I don't know, Kurosh, you could tell because you're a Kirby enthusiast. But instead of swallowing enemies and gaining their abilities, now Kirby needs to find the abilities in the game.
Yeah.
And then he has them permanently in his pause screen, and you can swap at any time, or you can press the shoulder buttons to instantly switch. And I thought that was neat. I was like,
It was fun.
yeah, it was fun because you would see like challenges and be like, okay, what power would be useful here? And sometimes they just show you the little icon, like, okay, you need lightning. But sometimes it was like more creative problem solving.
I'm curious and this is kind of just in general, this could go generally, but it could just apply to Milky Way, whichever you want, whichever applies to you. What is your favorite of what Kirby Superstar offers? What is the favorite ability of everyone?
You go first. I got to think about it.
My favorite is the one on the cover, and it's been the one that always sticks with me, is Beam. I love the jester hat. I love the wand. I love the playfulness. I love the vibrancy of it, the presentation of it. Just every aspect of it spoke to me. It's not to say the other ones aren't good, but that was the one that just jumped off the game for me.
I agree. Sakurai wanted to make this more like a fighting game because they added the 2-player mode. And in playtesting, so Kirby, instead of swallowing, he can create a helper that's controlled by the AI or controlled by another player. And it's pretty chaotic. In fact, I have here, like, even the game admits that it is confusing at times. It says it's a little confusing at first, but give it a try and you'll catch on. I didn't use the helper most of the time because the game's not that hard, and if you don't have someone else, it's just like the AI just kind of muddied up the screen. I don't know, Derek. What was your stance on the AI helpers?
Yeah, it felt like just kind of a waste of a piece of life, honestly.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, it was like, what's this guy really doing for me? Like, sometimes he'll just like run into enemies and stuff like that. And yeah, I did like, it's something that, when we were playing a little before we recorded, it was cool having like a 2-player Kirby thing, like when he became an actual second Kirby.
yeah, we were having fun.
But like, as far as like, it's not like an animal, like, like it's like here's this weird blob that isn't really doing that much for you, and the AI is like really bad. Like, it's just like it just runs into things, and it sometimes will actively like hurt you. Like, cool, I want to get this enemy, and it's like, I killed it, I just ate it with my tongue, and you're just like, so I did not enjoy it, and I would accidentally summon him all the time.
I would argue that your helper is almost like a cautionary tale in some ways. Like, it does the dumb mistakes that I would normally make, but now I get to learn and take that information and educate myself and be like, I shouldn't do that.
What confused me though is that the helper it looks like an enemy. It's just
Yeah.
flashing and helping you. So it's like I feel like I don't know, visually they could have made it a bit more obvious or separated or something. I don't know. It just made it confusing. And even the tutorial admits that. Did you guys catch that the tutorial though thought you'd be so confused it had to tell you what the controller was?
I thought that was funny.
Like,
I like that that's not the controller I'm using.
Yeah, the Kirby says, "Hey, the controller, it's the gray thing with the purple buttons, which is not what my Switch looks like."
Right, because you can buy that controller. I have the Nintendo 64 one. I do not have the Super Nintendo one.
I'm gonna take a different stance on the helper, because for 1 of my health to then get something with 4 health that goes and kills things, and if you like keep feeding it new powers, it will heal it back up or something.
Yeah.
I actually straight up wrote down that the helpers seem more useful in this game than I am, which honestly is also how this podcast feels sometimes.
Oh, Mike.
And so, like, there are bosses that I got through entirely. I'm like, I am losing to this boss. I'm just going to keep spawning a helper, and the helper will kill it, and I will avoid being hit. And this is a very good system.
delegating tasks.
Yeah.
So when Mike finally gets in my way, I'll just have to swallow him and regain my health. I don't know what.
So was I the only one that was like, if you look back in the history of like how games would maybe you would heal one another, the way this approached healing one another?
So cute and weird.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, am I the only one?
Yeah.
It doesn't outright do it, but it just Kirby goes over the other your helper's face and they share health all of a sudden.
The little smooch,
Yeah, they hug.
here you go, buddy.
Something happens.
You think they're kissing?
Every time I saw
I 100% took that to be a kiss of life.
yeah,
Okay.
I took it as like a touch of life.
It was the 90s, so they couldn't say it, but we all knew what was going on.
But it was interesting. It was a different approach.
It's like a less seedy way of healing from what Zelda 2 does.
Yeah, the fairies. But this reminded me of like Toe Jam and Earl on the Genesis, where you'd high five and share your health. But what's interesting though is that when Kirby heals his helpers, like it doesn't cost him anything. Like he just hugs or kisses or canoodles or whatever. But you don't really have control over when that's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's just when they cross paths.
It reminded me of like when I used to play on the DS and just be playing like with my friend who'd also have his DS, and and I just remember like somehow you would get like health by like sucking like things from each other, and like me and my friend would be playing it in high school, and people would just be looking over at us because we were just like, suck me now, just go and suck me up now, and people were like, what is those two doing over there?
They're having fun is what they're having.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was so like direct about it that I didn't even think that there'd be a not kissing interpretation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For some reason, my mind went hug, but it was super funny to be in the middle of an intense boss fight, and all of a sudden they're just like, "Hey, bring it in."
Just come on in, buddy.
Yeah, get over here, big guy.
Hey, lock in. We got this.
Yeah, because it didn't cost anything. It was really easy to keep the helper like healed up.
Yeah, but so that's what I think though with Milky Way Wishes, it's the final game and it's like the most challenging mode. But if you were using helpers and you can create a helper anytime you want, because now you can get your powers from the pause menu, I'm kind of glad I didn't because I feel like it would have taken some of the tension away of that final game mode. And then the last game we haven't talked about as far as the traditional Kirby side-scrolling games is the Great Cave Offensive. This is probably mostly known for its large Smash Brothers stage. Mike, have you played this one? I know you and I are a big Smash Brothers guy, but I don't think you played the more recent games.
Yeah, I have never seen this.
Yeah. It's one of the largest Smash Brothers stages. You zoom so far out when you play this one. And what's cool is that in an homage to the deadly lava areas of the Superstar game, is one of the few Smash Brothers stages where like if you touch it, you die. You don't fly off to the edge. It's
Oh.
Yeah.
instant death if you touch the lava, which is was pretty cool. And this game is different in its format in that it has you going through a series of levels looking for loot. You're looking for treasure chests, and the levels are connected by these fun little minecart transitions where you're pretty much invincible, right? In the minecart. You guys ever struggle with these?
In Donkey Kong Country, yes.
Yeah, but not this game.
Not in this one, no.
It's like the hardest levels in Donkey Kong Country, but in Kirby Superstar, the Minecraft stages that connect the levels are kind of just for a funsy little break up the action. And that's what I like about this game. It breaks up the action, you know.
Yeah,
You're not doing the
tempo and
same
the
thing for
rhythm
too
is-
long. Yeah.
I agree very
Top
much.
notch. And so then at the end of the game, you will be given your total loot value. And so like you're going for a high score, you want to get the most valuable loot. And if you want 100% the game, you have to find all of the pieces, which I imagine would take a long. I think it's 90 different pieces of treasure you can find.
I thought it was 60.
Something like that. Yeah. Definitely got a 0 at the end.
This is definitely devalued the values I assumed. Because
But-
all of these are just in G, which I don't know what units those are. I mean,
It's got to be gold, right?
That's what I always think. Whenever I see G in a game, I'm like, that's gold.
I just presume gold. I mean, or that it's 9.8 meters per second squared.
No, it's like 10 Gs, like you see here in movies.
But yeah, seeing that a dime is 10 Gs now means that 1 G is 1 cent, I think, and you have entirely destroyed the economy that I thought we were dealing with here.
So what's funny, Mike, is that you think you're being real clever, but the Kirby universe takes place in the very, very far future, but on Earth, more or less. Like the Forgotten Land really gets into it. Like you find relics of humanity. So I could see that the Kirby world is like dealing in gold and an old dime.
It doesn't happen on Popstar? What?
Yeah, well, no.
Well, I think it goes into different cosmic spaces because it does. I mean, obviously, the mode Milky Way wishes is referring to our galaxy, but
Right.
And then you look at the most recent one on the Switch, I think Forgotten
Land.
That is like suburban, modern, kind of Last of Us-esque environment. So there is references to being around humankind.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of neat. So I think Mike anticipated this, but we're going to play a quick mini game minute. I've invented a game for us called The Price is Fight. And here's how it's going to work. There are 4 different levels in the Great Cave Offensive. And so I have taken 4 pieces of treasure from each level. You guys are going to take turns selecting your treasure with the goal of ending the game with the highest value possible. So we will go in order of who's been on the show the shortest for the first round here. So we're going to go with Kurosh first. For level 1, Sub-Tree, you have 4 choices, Kurosh. You can get the Indie Whip, which is Indiana Jones's whip, essentially. The Metroid Screwball, which Screwball, 2 words. You can pick the Star Stone, or you can pick the Zebra Mask, aka Fanto from Super Mario 2, the sentient mask. So, Kurosh, which treasure do you want to pick first?
And to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, I'm trying to pick the one that would appraise for the highest value.
Correct. Which one has the most gold value according to the game? And I did round for easy math.
Okay. Are we working in G's or are we working in
gold, in thousands of gold?
Okay, Bob Barker, I got you.
Yeah. So which one do you think is worth the most?
This is a tough one. I feel like worth Indy's whip. I mean, if I know it's Indy's whip, that there's historical value there, archaeological value possibly. But Metroid Screwball in a far-flung future of a mercenary highly wanted could that ability in and of itself could warrant a lot of value. But I think I'm gonna go with Starstone just because I feel like cosmic or interstellar, intergalactic kind of materials would net high value at whatever market we're shopping in.
Okay, so Kurosh is picking the Starstone. Derek, you have second choice. You can choose the Indie Whip, the Metroid Screwball, or the Phantom Mask.
I was leaning toward the Starstone, but I think I'll go with the Metroid Screwball because that seems like something. It's Samus. You like you said, Kurosh is the far-flung future, so that one seems right to me.
All right, going with the Metroid Screwball. So, Mike, your choices are Indie Whip and Phantom Mask.
I think what my first pick was from the get-go, because I think I got it, and I thought I saw a lot of numbers. I think I'm going the Zebra Mask.
Really? What's your reasoning?
Entirely, I think I got it, and I saw a price tag, and was like, that's a lot.
Okay.
Well, I'm so disappointed in Derek because Derek got this too and saw a big price tag, but he wasn't paying attention.
I thought it was a small price tag for some because I got it and I remember that I was like, oh.
All right, round one totals. In last place is Derek with 80,000 gold. Not bad. Second place is Kurosh with 82,000 gold. And in first place is Mike with 278,000 gold for the Phantom Mask. So now off to a bad start.
What was the whip?
The whip was 7,000, the lowest, worth barely anything.
So at least I remembered that because I do remember that not being worth a lot.
All right, so now we'll have Derek pick first because he's in third place. Derek, do better this time.
That's what they say to me every day.
I think you're great. Derek's going to choose from the Crystal Treasures Level 2 Glass Slipper, Lee's Nunchucks. It was just called Nunchucks in the version we played, but the Japanese version, it was called Lee's Nunchucks, as in Bruce Lee's Nunchucks. Captain Falcon's Helmet, or the Amber Rose.
This is tough. I mean, based on the last round where it was like, cool stuff from old games, Captain Falcon's Helmet seems like the way to go, but like, I don't know. I feel like glass slippers. That's a classy thing, It's a fairy tale. It's shiny. It's got that little ting next to it. So I'm going to go with the glass slippers.
Glass slippers for Derek. All right. And if I get quiet for a second, it's because I'm doing math.
Math. The great equalizer.
My nemesis.
All right. So we'll give the glass slipper to Derek. Kurosh, what will your choice be for level 2?
For level 2, let's go Captain Falcon's helmet.
Captain Falcon's hamburger helper, also known as helmet. Okay. And so then, Mike, last choice, Lee's Nunchucks or Amber Rose?
Well, I was hoping that the Captain Falcon's helmet was going to stick around, because I also got that and thought it had a large number. I have no idea what the Amber Rose is.
Some say it's Beauty and the Beast, or some say it's just like, I guess, in terms of paleontology or whatever the phrase would be, sometimes roses would get stuck in amber and be preserved.
You get a kiss from it on the gray sometimes.
There you go.
In either case, I do love Bruceploitation films as a genre.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with the nunchucks, with Lee's nunchucks on this.
Mike is going with Lee's Nunchucks, which...
We're doing some math.
All right, so do you guys want, your current totals? I guess we'll just do current totals.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Say what these are, and then just let us know the places.
No, because then if I get it wrong, then you're gonna call me out on it. So
And that's why I said just say, you don't have to go to the exact numbers, just what the places are
Yeah.
Of this one.
of this one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So the lowest value on this level was Amber Rose, and then second lowest was Captain Falcon's Helmet.
Dang.
The second highest is Lee's Nunchuck, and the highest for this round was the Glass Slippers.
Yo, let's go.
So that brings Derek into second place. Mike is still in first, and then Kurosh drops down to third, but you'll get there. Okay, level 3, Old Tower Treasures. Your choices, boys, are Koopa Shell, Falchion, or how do you say that word?
I think it's Falchion.
Falchion, which is Marth's sword from Fire Emblem, Mr. Saturn from Earthbound, or the Mithril armor from the Lord of the Rings.
Oh man.
Kurosh, you get first choice.
My memory. I'm gonna go Mr. Saturn. My gut says Mr. Saturn. From the Earthbound franchise, yeah.
Kurosh is going to go Mr. Saturn from the Earthbound series. He always creeped me out in Smash Bros. I don't know about you. Yeah, I don't know.
I was confused until I played Earthbound, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't feel as bad or threatened.
He just walks around the Smash Bros stage.
Yeah,
but you can throw him, and he's kind of pings around like a ping pong ball. All right, Derek, walk us through your choice.
Well, I was going back and forth, but I know that Mithril is worth more. The Mithril shirt that Frodo had is worth more than the value of the entire Shire. So I'm gonna go with that one.
Gonna go with that. You're gonna go with the Mithril, or Mithril, however you say it, armor.
I've heard it both ways.
from Lord of the Rings. And then Mike, what do you want to do?
I think I've got to go with the sword. That I feel like the sword's got to be more than a Koopa shell.
And you would absolutely be right, Mike. Good choice. So the lowest one in maybe the game is the Koopa shell. That's worth like well, I guess a dime is worth less, but the Koopa shell was worth 1,000 gold.
That checks out. That checks out.
But no one picked that one. Then the second lowest was Mr. Saturn. Second highest, Mithril armor, and then the highest value, Falchion. So Mike's lead continues to dominate, but big round for the last one. Still anybody's game.
Right,
Final round, Garden Treasures. Your choices are the Katana, aka Masterwork Sword, Kong's Barrel, the Pegasus Wing from Kid Icarus, and the Triforce. So, Kurosh, you get to start us off.
Sorry, Derick, Triforce.
You knew.
I'm saying sorry because
You knew.
He's wearing his Hyrule hat with Triforce and a Milk Bar shirt right now. I feel absolutely horrible taking this.
Oh man, I was like,
you did him dirty.
I was like, oh man, I know he's gonna do it. I know he's gonna do it too. I was just like thinking, like, what's the second best one?
All right, Derick, what is the second best one?
I'll go for the Pegasus Wing, I guess. I mean, swords are cool, but like, I don't know.
Gonna go for the Pegasus Wing. All right.
Am I wrong? Is Kid Icarus HAL Laboratories game?
It is.
Okay.
Oh well, that bodes well for me.
Yeah, it's a Sakurai's baby. All right, Mike. So your final choices: Katana or Kong's Barrel.
So I guess I'll go strategic here because I'll take the Katana. Because then if I'm in second, I'll cut him.
All right. So for the final level, the lowest value was Kong's Barrel at 2,000 gold. The second lowest was the Pegasus Wing at 43,000.
All right.
The second highest value was the Triforce
Wow.
at 800,000 gold. And the most expensive item on this list was the Katana at 990,000 gold. It is actually the highest price thing in the entire game. So,
All right.
well done on that, Mike. Give me a second to do some math, everyone.
I feel like this person who shows up at like a storage unit auction last, and it turns out that like the one left over has all the good stuff.
Okay, so I don't even read these numbers. We are done. And honorable mention to Derick, who got third place.
What?
With 455,000 gold total. In second place is Kurosh with 1,053,000 gold. And dominating the prices fight is Mike with 1,648,000 gold.
Damn.
Good job,
well
you
done,
guys.
Well done. Well done.
And I get that check win.
Yeah. You get that check when we have like, I don't know what, 40 listeners. Like,
oh man.
but I mean, yeah, I feel like there were some cultural elements to how they priced the treasure in this game. Like the Masterwork sword, I guess, is a really prestigious title for well-made swords in Japan. So I think there was some kind of Japanese pride that went into that being worth more than the Triforce.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, come on, that's the Triforce. Like what Japanese pride? That's the thing. You know, that's the holy relic of all holy relics, as far as I'm concerned.
Why's Kirby got to go do all this like collect stuff to make a wish? He picked up the Triforce and that gets a wish, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, there you go. It's true.
Is it the full Triforce or is it a piece?
No, it's all three right there.
It says Triforce. It's Triforce.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, so let's wrap up discussion on Kirby Super Star by covering the last couple modes here. There is Gourmet Race, which is still a 2D game, but they have removed all of the enemies from the levels, and they removed all of the power-ups. So it's pure platforming. It's just jumping and floating and sliding, and your goal is to beat King DDD to the end of the level while eating more food. You have kind of two parallel goals. You get a point for every piece of food you eat, 3 points if it's a tomato, and 30 points if you beat him. So it is possible to like kind of lose like Sonic 2 style, right, Mike? You lose the race but get more points. I thought this was neat because, like Kurosh said, it's still the same game engine, but it's a racing game now.
Yeah.
And I only wish it was 2 players. I kind of feel like they couldn't do a race unless I guess the player who got left behind takes damage or something. I don't know.
I feel like it could have easily been a 2-player. Like at least right now with what they offered now with the Switch Online in the co-op play. If they couldn't do it then, I don't see why not now.
Well, because I mean, like when they made this is just a port of the SNES game, and they couldn't do split screen, on the SNES cartridge because it just wasn't coded that way. The camera can't follow different characters. I thought this was cute. I just always get bummed when a race mode is single player. Like it always feels a little off to me. And then when you beat all of them, you get the arena. It's this boss rush mode where you hilariously start off fighting a single Waddle Dee who's like scared of you. The very first boss in the boss rush is he's literally like crying and sweating, and he doesn't really.
I'm in danger.
Yeah, exactly. It's a real Ralph Wiggum kind of enemy. But what's neat though is that you can play this as 2-player co-op, and you also can do these little rest areas in between boss fights where you can change your weapon or heal up. And that's kind of become an industry standard for modes like this. But it feels like Sakurai kind of figured it out here. I'd be curious if another game had this sort of like rest area concept in between a gauntlet of enemies.
Is that a tomato tree?
It is a tomato tree. Yeah, that's the maximum tomato tree.
It can be no more tomato tree.
That's where the maximum tomatoes grow. But it's neat though because like the game will actually remember how many of those you've eaten.
Oh, okay.
It reminds me of like Smash Brothers when you've got like the 3 heart containers or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's Sakurai again. It's his mode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. And this is probably a good chance to talk about the bosses. The game has some pretty cool bosses. Can we all just agree the coolest boss in the game is Computer Virus? Did you guys get to this one?
Yes.
I did not. I did not even get to this guy.
I don't no, I did not.
The virus is the virus, not the dragon coming out of the virus, right?
The Computer Virus is an ingenious boss fight where Kirby walks onto the screen and all of a sudden he's trapped in a turn-based RPG.
Huh.
And the enemy can't move because it's just a little JPEG in the box. And it will attack when the text announces it's attacking. You can still freely move as Kirby, but you can only do damage to the boss when the text reads Kirby attacks. So you need to like take turns, and then you fight like a wizard and a dragon and like a knight, and it's just freaking genius that they're jumping out of the and you have the HP total. It's such a cool mode. I really love it.
Kirby's always been such a creative game like that'll just do weird off the wall stuff.
Yeah. 100%. And the final boss of Superstar, Marks, is
Yes, I remember this one.
he's a real bastard. He's the quest giver. He's the old man at the start of Zelda who sends you on your quest. And so Kirby gets all the Dragon Balls and is about to make his wish, and then he swoops in and steals the wish. Wishes for ultimate power, and now he has like these cool like stained glass wings and laser powers, and he was a boss in Smash Ultimate, and I didn't appreciate the reference at the time.
Wait, his wish was stained glass wings?
And amongst other things, it's like a biblically accurate angel kind of enemy.
Yeah, this is like Evangelion levels of like crazy anime concepts.
It also occurred to me that like he sends you on your quest, right? And so he was planning to betray you the whole time. You did all the legwork so that he could swoop in. And like this is like
National Treasure 2?
I was gonna say this is like the "Would you kindly" moment from BioShock.
But Ed Harris is in National Treasure 2 also solid. I appreciate that.
My reference was better, damn it.
Derek's like sick reference, bro.
Didn't enjoy the fatty whale boss. It uses mode 7 graphics to show the whale, diving towards the camera, but I could never figure out what actually hit me.
Yeah.
Like, is it the water? Is it the whale's body? It's sloppy.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I feel like part of just the scale of it being so large and chaotic is
Fish don't have scales, Kurosh.
huh?
Fish do have scales. Whales don't. I messed that joke up.
It's a laugh.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I just mean in the sense of like, do you think it might have been intentional to make it feel obscure as to what was hitting you or not?
I guess. And Wham Bam Rock has not aged well. There was this weird through line in the 90s of like witch doctor stereotypes.
Yeah, we don't have to limit that to the 90s. That's substantially older.
We've been playing games from the 90s, though,
Yeah.
where this has been a major thing, and it just hasn't aged well as a depiction, and Nintendo clearly knew it, because when they re-released this as Kirby Super Star Ultra for the Nintendo DS, Wham Bam Rock is very much like a changed appearance, with the lips and the bulging eyes, and now he has like 3 eyes and like beast nostrils to sort of imply that this isn't even a person anymore. But I saw that and I was like, that's not great.
Yeah, no, it's like original Jinx in Pokemon.
Yeah, but it is a big face, like, with the big lips and the bulging eyes. It's like Jinx, and it hasn't aged well for similar reasons.
I feel like that Jinx, Mr. Popo.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to defend.
Although seeing Kirby fighting a giant hand feels familiar.
There's a lot of big hands in 90s Nintendo games. Like, that was all the rage.
Yeah, Star Fox.
Star Fox, Bongo Bongo, and Zelda. There's a lot of them.
Brothers. Yeah.
The
that's
90s
funny.
were all giant hands and kids trapped in video games. That was it.
Yeah, I remember a lot of hands. You'd have to fight hands going to school. Like, they were everywhere in the 90s.
Well, hands is slang now for getting in a fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it came from, was all these 90s games.
What's not too hard to defend, though, is the versus modes. Derek and I were playing together, and there's 2 kind of timing-based competitive games you can play with another player. You can play Samurai Kirby, where you and the AI player or your friend with another controller try to press a face button the moment you see the exclamation point. So it's essentially like a quick draw game, which is, clearly taken from the NES mini game, because Kirby did this in Kirby's Adventure on the NES, but now it's the production values amped up. It's 2-player mode. We had a lot of fun with it.
The music playing while it happens too is also very cinematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I have
love
a
it.
theory that this game is subject to latency issues if you're playing with the dock. And if anyone has evidence against it, I do not wish to hear it.
I don't know why you would say this.
So I'm gonna guess Kurosh did pretty good on this one.
I never won.
Oh,
We drew once every other time. And I'm like, I accept losing a lot of the time. There's a certain point where I'm like, since he's playing directly handheld and I'm playing through a TV, I should have had like 1.
well, Kurosh, congratulations, and Mike,
Thank you.
Yeah.
do better.
I think the proper term you're looking for is get good.
And I will defend you, Kurosh. I don't think there's any latency issues, and I'm not just saying that because I was playing handheld and Jaymo was playing a dock. Not biased.
That is
at all.
not relevant at all.
Yeah.
I think we tied on this.
I did win once. I did win.
The samurai one was also really fun in that Kirby's weapon changes with who he's fighting.
Yeah.
They're not actually slicing each other. It's always cutesy, so it's like a little toy hammer or a pie or.
But each of them was respective to whoever he was facing. So like even though the hilt was always the same for his like samurai sword and everything, whatever he bonked you with or hit you with, if Kirby was able to come out successful.
As you can imagine, it took us a while to realize it did this because I was playing as Kirby.
We were doing very thorough analysis.
At some point, it's like, oh, wait, if I could win, this would be interesting in its own right.
Yeah.
It was a lot more just being... I don't think a lot of that was cutesy. Like, Kirby getting run down by that wheel does not feel cutesy. It feels painful.
That wheel was brutal.
Yeah, and the game over screen, the wheel is just crushing him like roadkill. Like it's just staying on top of him. It's pretty bad.
A Joy-Con of this segment was I wish for the second player, and this applies to both of these modes, there was an ability to choose which of the randomized characters you get to pick from. Because in this mode, I got King Dedede once, whereas I got the wheel, the cook, and Meta Knight a few times.
God, that cook was humiliating.
I would like to be the like painter guy. You just come up with a paintbrush. That would be cool,
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't make a difference though. Like the gameplay is identical.
It is.
Yeah, but sometimes you want to just... Getting hit with that hammer and Kirby just kind of squirming like he's in pain was like a lot worse than, oh, he's been hit over with a fan. This is like...
Yeah, by the Waddle Dee.
Yeah.
What was your experience with Megaton Punch? So this is one where it's not just who can press it the fastest, who can press it at the right time. So there's a power gauge that builds up. Then there is a accuracy gauge, which is a crosshair lining up. And then there's the timing, which is a pendulum swing. So you have to hit the button at the perfect moment 3 times to trigger your Megaton Punch. Whichever player has the stronger punch prevails. Derek, I mean, I had fun with this. It's pretty wacky. The animations are pretty imaginative with like the whole Earth cracking, or I guess planet Popstar, I should say, cracking with your megaton force. But we encountered kind of an annoying thing. You want to go into it, Derek? The obscuring of the view.
Right, yeah, because it was like I was like, okay, cool. Because the first time we did it, it was like we were almost lined up with what we were doing and cracked at the same time. But if somebody did it first, and then it would like do the like little cut scene, and then it would cut back to you, and then you're like, oh wait, you have to like configure your brain and quickly be like, okay, where was I with the pendulum? Okay, it was here. And it definitely threw me off at least once.
I don't get that decision because it's not as though doing this quicker seemed to give an additional benefit.
No.
So it's kind of like, why don't you just wait on the animation, or why is this simultaneous?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it this way,
I would have preferred, Kirby goes or the enemy goes first, player 2 goes first, and then it demonstrates the whole thing, and then Kirby goes and does the whole thing, and then you would see it, and it's like just its own individual experience. To me, this mode and Milky Way Wishes both just remind me the cosmic level at which Kirby operates.
Yeah.
For this, not as much, but just still in the sense of like his tournaments, his just little casual tournaments where there's an audience for, is world breaking, literally.
Yeah.
And it's very much like DBZ Tournament of Power vibes to me personally, and I love that. I love that scale and that epicness, but it's like that silly levels of like, it goes from like very lighthearted, goofy, down to earth, swallows a tomato, to world shattering, traveling across the cosmos, dealing with existential things. I love that range.
And you've got Mario and Luigi cheering the song, and Birdo again. Why does she even come to this?
Well, in fairness, she's actually blinking.
She's got to support the pink,
Yeah, exactly. She's back in the pink.
That's still disinterest.
But she's blinking in this animation, but normally her eyes are like half open.
Bombastic side-eye.
Bombastic side-eye.
That's my point, is it's like she's not into this.
Well, I don't know. You want to be a good +1. Do we have anything to say in praise or criticism of Kirby Super Star before we move on to our second game of the night?
I think I would say one of the things that I found frustrating, because it tries to do 8 game modes, and even with manuals, it is not clear to me what it thinks I should think I'm doing on some of these. So some of these are fairly linear and straightforward, but like the cave thing, like I hit a point where I'm not really sure what my end game is. Like, it's collect the things, but I don't know, am I trying to collect everything? Can I go back and find additional things? There's elements to that structure that I'm just like, I don't know what you think I should think I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I felt lost with that one, and I felt things were in such small bursts that I don't feel like stuff was explained. And it's the kind of deal where at that time, if the manual had been a bit better, I think it could have covered that. But like the manual was a little vague in the terms. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, was some of these were just either too brief to get into, like the gourmet chase thing, where it's like, oh, I appear to have beaten this the first go, I don't know why I'd come back, or just not clear what I was doing because of how it's bite-sized without enough context to kind of give me a direction. I think
I was never really confused by this game. And maybe it's just because I'm more familiar with like Sakurai's work, but I always feel like as a dev, he's always kind of on your side. So just kind of power through the game and you'll probably get to the end and have a good time. I guess I just didn't stress it because I just had faith that as long as I kept going right, eventually I'd see something cool and the game would end.
I agree to a lot of your points of, I think a lot of Sakurai and HAL Labs, just like general development structure for these games, and this one very much so, it's very much a mindset of just don't think, just do. It's like execution, it's going in and it's appealing to children and to those that just enjoy this environment and space. And as an overall package, I loved it. I think if I were like looking back at it now in hindsight and where I would see room for improvement, I would have loved you could easily see a disparity in levels of like quality and time spent on certain modes versus other ones and variances there. But I kind of embrace that as the total package of like, hey, we're doing kind of like a buckshot of ideas, and this is the spread.
My only complaint would be the only thing that really confused me. I felt like the buttons were wrong. Like I felt like it, like right, like because especially when I would go back and forth between this and the game we're about to talk about, I felt like, why is this the suck up button? Like I kept getting confused when I would switch between the games because, like, you know, all the Kirby's Dream Land ones, it's like, okay, cool, this is the right button to suck up. Even between like N64 games and stuff like that or DS games, it always feels like, okay, you know what to do. But this one, everything, all the buttons were in a different spot, so that really threw me. Did that affect you guys at all?
I think it affected me in the reverse order
Okay.
of going from this to the other one, so I didn't know which one to blame.
It did affect me. I didn't jump between them as often, but when I was in one and then I switched to the other, I remember having to initially just do a quick calibration of like, wait, this is this, this is this. It's not. It didn't feel the same, so I was like, okay. Then I was off to the races.
Let's just blame Nintendo because they could very easily in the Nintendo Switch Online emulator have a function where you just remap your controls game for game. And the fact that that feature would cost them so little, and I know it's possible because you can remap the buttons permanently. You can change A to B or X to Y for all your Switch applications. But, you know, these are emulations of games that might not be controlling exactly the way people remember. So I don't know, let people change easily. It can't be that difficult. I don't know much about programming. Even I know that should be easy.
I feel like having, you know, I agree with that sentiment of the ease of difficulty. I think at that point, it's, in my presumption, it would be less of a difficulty of implementation, but more rather we are making a design choice. And what that reason is, I don't know. I would love to know at least of why they choose not to do these things, because there might be, I think part of for them of releasing these in the Switch Online library is the historical archiving of it. And so if that's how it was presented then, they want to maintain that.
That's a good point.
So I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to that, but I wonder if that's part of the reason. I think the biggest thing here again on Nintendo's fault is even if they're not going to change it, I would love to hear why they won't change it.
So let's move on to the second and last game of our night, which is Kirby's Dream Land 3, released for the SNES in 1997. I will start by reading the description on the Nintendo Switch Online emulator. It says, Kirby, Dreamland's resident hero and everyone's favorite puffball, must once again save the day when the mischievous King DDD starts causing trouble. Kirby must travel through an assortment of levels battling an exotic array of enemies, both new and familiar, determined to stop him from completing his mission. Always armed with his trusty ability to swallow enemies and gain special attacks, Kirby can also unite with some of his animal friends and make use of their particular talents. Featuring detailed graphics, challenging boss battles, and the distinct charm of a Kirby game, it's no wonder this title is considered a classic. Let's take a quick look at the box art, because that was often people's first impressions. Japanese box art did a really cool thing because this game has sort of a kind of more artsy look than the series has had up to this point. Everything kind of looks like it's drawn in colored pencils and kind of a really cool sort of sketchy sort of look to it. And so the Japanese box art was made to look like it was like a box of crayons or colored pencils or like a coloring book. You know, it had that sort of visual language to it. And the Japanese box art, it's just Kirby and Gooey, his little partner, kind of running through a grass field, very happy to see the customer. The North American box art is super similar in that, you know, you have the same image of Kirby and Gooey, but since the North American box is oriented horizontally, you have more space on the right-hand side, so they added all 6 animal companions and Wispy Woods for some reason. Like, shouldn't that tree be trying to kill them? That's an antagonistic tree.
I would argue that the reason the tree was included is because there's a number of new faces in terms of all the other characters, and it's something to be like, we need a familiar face besides Kirby.
Yeah. Roll out the tree.
Bring in Wispy. Yeah. But the other thing that seems different is a bit of it takes a departure from that pastel-esque art style in this box art between the two.
So I think that's kind of a miss. Like, kind of put that front and center, because I don't know about you guys. Did you guys like how this game looked?
I think actually the Japanese cover is a lot better because to me it feels like papercraft to me.
Yeah.
Paper Mario vibes.
Like not even just like a drawing thing, but this feels like you could easily this is shapes cut out and stacked.
Yes.
I watched an unboxing just to see, like, is this 3-dimensional? Like, could you touch like, are there actual physical layers to this thing?
I also feel like the Japanese box art is more true to what the game looks like visually, as opposed to, while it doesn't show as many of the characters on the cover. I feel like the way the art is presented on the American box art is a little bit of a departure. It kind of flattens everything and kind of gives this kind of like a mute, even though this is more vibrant, I would say, it lacks the depth. It feels flatter at a cost, and it's not bad. It's just I feel like if you comparing in comparison to the other one, this is more, the Japanese one's more true to it.
It's special. The Japanese one's more special. It's more memorable, you know. So this was developed once again by HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo. It was not directed by Sakurai. It was directed by Shinichi Shimomura, who also directed Kirby's Dream Land 2, as you could probably guess. For my knowledge's Nintendo Power Trivia section, I wanted you guys to know that this game uses a unique SNES graphics mode called pseudo-hi resolution, in which you can color blend adjacent pixels to create dithered sprites. And apparently the game uses that to achieve a transparency effect like you see here with the transparent blue clouds floating in front of Kirby. I don't know much about programming. Did that make sense to you guys? Dithered sprites and pixel blending?
It sounded cool.
I think for me, the understanding was that, and this didn't make sense at face value. Like when you were reading that, I had also looked into this a little bit of like, why did they choose this? And I went down a rabbit hole. I think it was just, this was the last first party game released by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd imagine some of the design philosophy, I'd be curious. It seems like they were trying to try new measures and what could they get out of it that they couldn't do before in terms of higher res, in terms of doing more complex visual elements. And I think what it's trying to do artistically and in translating that into like graphical, like what that is implemented is where they experimented with this technique. It's interesting to say the least. I don't know if it hit for me, honestly, personally as a gamer, but that was trying to understand why it was happening, where it was coming from. What do you guys think?
I do think it looked good. I think that, like, you know, I might not understand the technicalities of it, but I really like the aesthetics of this game quite a bit. And you like talk about the pastels and the crayons and like almost the transparency between things. And I think it does really work. And it feels like you mentioned, Kurosh, that this is it's the last first party Nintendo game for the SNES, and like it feels like they're really pushing the boundaries of this somewhat limited game system.
My interpretation of what you said as far as the transparencies thing, I think this is in effect a way of outsourcing the ability to give that sense of depth to the visual effect of the output. Since anything modern, I think, I'm going to say anything modern, I feel that's a safe assumption. If they're trying to create that idea of transparency, is actually having to go, here's a background object, here's a foreground object. If one is in front of the other, what ultimate color do you get? And so that is a processing intensive thing. Whereas this is taking the idea of, well, if you just set up two grids of pixels that are, think like a checkerboard, and the one color on the checkerboard is showing one image and the other set of squares in the checkerboard is showing the other image, the output is then going to be something that some combination of the output device and the brain go, oh, that's a transparent thing. And so then you haven't had to do any of the calculations of how should this change how it looks. You're creating basically sort of a visual effect without having to actually create a true image of what a transparent thing looks like.
So what's wild is that you and Kurosh are both right, and I just learned from both you guys coming together on this one, because I was reading about this and people were discussing like, why did they do this? And this Super Nintendo could do true transparency. They had that ability that Mike was talking about, where like, okay, have these two layers, but someone said that like, well, this is much easier and requires much less because it's a trick on the eye as opposed to like coding thing.
So resource allocation, resource intensive.
Exactly. And, being that the Nintendo 64 was already out,
Yeah.
this game was not advertised. It was shadow dropped. And it's interesting to think of it, Kurosh, as like, well, what if this was like them kind of testing things for their future development and getting what they could out of this console? And that's why they didn't really advertise it. And that's why maybe it's a bit basic compared to like Superstar, is that it occupied a very specific time in Nintendo's development history. And the company probably understands its importance more than we do.
Probably, I'd have to agree with you. I think when I was looking at when these two games came out, I was kind of very surprised by this releasing after Superstar Saga.
Right. Because it's so much more basic.
I feel like maybe there's more under the hood going on, but like just in terms of what the game is offering as a player experience, this felt like it was much more attuned to like the older style and the more simple stuff that they had done prior. And not to take anything away from it, it was just I felt like Superstar Saga was more vibrant, more kinetic, more pushing the envelope in a bunch of different directions. They would have maybe taken one of those directions on the next iteration and it amped up on it, or just go then to the next console with like the crystal shards or something.
Feels like this is just more of Dreamland 2, not a new thing. So it feels like it should be closer to Dreamland 2.
Yeah, and finding out that this was released after the N64 came out is really interesting because, like I said, that's the one I'm familiar with, is Crystal Shards, right? And I was kind of shocked at like how much this game feels like a trial run for Crystal Shards, where even down to like the main enemy is the darkness that kind of like takes over the universe, this anthropomorphized darkness thing. And I'm like, oh, that's just in this too. A lot of the enemies are exactly the same, other than the animal helpers. I feel like there's not a lot that's distinct about. Like, it just feels like kind of just a more basic version of Crystal Shards. But even Crystal Shards has the same function of the animal helpers when you have like when you ride on DDD's back, or like you have, you know, the guy who paints or the girl who paints different things. I was like, this feels like, okay, we're gonna test all these ideas out that we want to do for this Kirby game on the 64. We're gonna try them out here first to see how they work.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this game looks so good. Like when I booted it up, like for a second I was like, is this like an N64 game? Just because of like something about the crispness of it, the textures and the layering of it. It just, I think you got to give this game, you know, it's a looker in my opinion.
I think I'd agree, but in a different way. I feel like Superstar Saga was very flashy and very, very vibrant. I feel like this is softer on the eyes, and it's like the more I look at it, the more I start appreciating what it's doing artistically. It's not necessarily like we're pushing the visual effects to the brim in any specific way, but when you like look at the attention to detail of the petals flying or the clouds just kind of hovering over things, there's a lot going on. And I do feel like it's a looker in that sense. It's like kind of like take an extra second and examine it. But at a first glance, I feel like I brushed it off personally, but
Yeah.
that it was like it is, but in a different way for me personally. But
It takes a while to notice that, like, apparently all the background rectangular things are apparently all gingham pattern.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like you don't really think about it. It's like, ah, it's great. It's yellow. It's like that is a weird pattern decision to go for, and it's done at just a level that you don't notice it's doing it.
The two-player mode with Derek and I played, and I think it works better here.
Yeah.
Because you can at any time, you don't need to find an enemy. At any time, Kirby can spit out Gooey, and Gooey takes a little bit of his health, but Gooey basically plays almost identical to Kirby. Gooey can absorb enemy abilities, Gooey can float, Gooey can, you know, shoot a little tongue out, and you know, that's his tongue is essentially the same as the vacuum suck attack. But I mean, I don't know, like I mean, Derek and I were having fun. It wasn't a wild time over in the breakout room, but I enjoyed myself.
I have a question for you guys. How much are you guys familiar with the Dragon Quest franchise?
He looks like the blue goo.
He does.
He looks like a rocket slime, I think.
Wasn't he that goo is like designed by like the Dragon Ball Z creator who just passed away, right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's the same artist that did the concept art for all of the Dragon Quest work. Toriyami, I believe.
But would that have predated this? It must have, because that was a Super Nintendo game.
It is. I just imagine, like, to me, there was strong vibes of the two, and I'm like, I wonder how much maybe there was work done by folks that, like, maybe he started here or he worked. I'm curious, but
Does Japan just have sentient blue goo that we don't know about?
I mean, not gonna say no.
You don't, Mike? This game does have mini games like Kirby Superstar, Kirby Adventure had, but they incorporate them into the levels. There's like memory challenges and there's like counting games where they show you a whole bunch of enemies on the screen and you have to guess how many of a certain type of enemy were there, but you only have like a split second to see it. Which, if you're rewinding, makes those games very easy. So I definitely cheated my way through these mini games.
Wow.
I liked these though being in the middle of the level because it broke things up a little bit.
Yeah. again, it's them trying different stuff, which is I always appreciate.
Yeah, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's just a solid Kirby game. And like we said, it looks incredible.
And I think the point of those mini games are what get you like the heart stars at the end.
Heart stars. Yes, we can talk about those.
I'm not really sure because like they're a thing you're supposed to get, but I do not have any idea how I'm supposed to get several of them.
So every level has essentially like in Super Mario 64, you have to get the star, right? It's not just get to the end of the level, it's get the star. And so there were 3 different tasks according to the booklet. To get a heart star in a level, you can do something with a flower, do something with a friend, or do something secret. All of those sound nefarious. Like if one of my students walked in and said, "I just did something with a flower," I'd be like, "What you do?"
I don't think it helps that the choo-choo is winking at you next in this image that you're sharing.
I don't understand what a choo-choo is either.
We haven't really gotten into it, but what this brings back from Kirby's Dream Land 2 on the Game Boy is that in addition to being able to steal powers from your enemies, and in addition to being able to summon an ally to help you, you have now a 3rd repertoire of abilities from these animal companions. Dreamland 2 had Rick the hamster, Ku the owl, and Kine the sunfish. This game adds Nago the cat, Choo Choo the now Kurosh, I'm glad you're here. We needed a Kirby enthusiast. The internet says that Choo Choo is an octopus, but Mike, this is Shigui, right? From Dreamland 2?
I was gonna guess cuttlefish, which is weirdly close to an octopus for not being anything like either.
But so, are you familiar with This is gonna get flagged weird. Are you familiar with Shigui, Kurosh?
That name doesn't ring a bell.
Kirby's Dream Land 2, in order to see the final ending, you had to fulfill this insane secret requirement of meeting a female GUI. And it was a 1 in 8 chance if you fulfilled very specific requirements. And it was unpublished except for like on the Nintendo hotline of how to actually beat the game. And because of how much this is a callback to Dreamland 2, I have to be convinced that this is the same. Would you guys not agree there's a stark visual similarity?
I agree with you, but my argument then becomes, what is a GUI if not an octopus? A baby. This looks like a young octopus.
I mean, octopi are not known for the tongues.
I thought jellyfish, like like the beginning of Finding Nemo. She's like, "You made me ink," like or no, that is an octopus. That is an octopus. So yeah,
I rest my case.
Yeah, Kurosh wins.
And I mean, cuttlefish are related, so it's somehow in the weird.
Do cuttlefish have tongues? Otherwise, your guess isn't any better.
No, but cuttlefish have more of like a flowy kind of all-around fin, like that it has.
My argument is when Mike and I were playing co-op on this one, I was operating as the rocket slime-esque creature, and Mike as Kirby was doing the swing move with Choo Choo, and it was suctioned to Kirby in a way that was very octopi-esque, one could argue.
Okay, I can see the tendrils.
Octopodal.
Is that from the makers of Sharknado? Octopoodle. But things we like about this game. So I'm not a fan of the animal companions. I know Mike isn't either. We covered it in our previous Kirby episode. It just kind of muddies the water.
What it reminds me of, have any of you ever gone to like a hot pot restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where like you get there and your first thing is, okay, select your broth, and you pick what broths you're going to use, and then it throws in, and by the way,
Mike, don't tell me you picked the Choo Choo broth. Please don't tell me you picked the Choo Choo broth.
You don't? And then like you pick, here's what's going in. And the first time I was there, once we got past that, and it was like 10 minutes of negotiations on like what we should all order to cook in there. And then it's like, oh, and then there's sauces over there. And I was like, no, I'm not getting up. I'm not getting that. Someone else was like, that is too many parameters to deal with. And that's where I feel like with this has now gotten to a point where I have no idea what's going on. It's like, nope, I'd almost rather limit this out and have an idea what's going on.
It's a hat on a hat,
Literally, though, with Choo Choo. She's like on top of your head.
Yeah.
I feel like if it had a stronger sense of what it wanted these characters to contribute to the game, I feel like it's kind of just going through the motions in some ways of like, they exist, they're around this world, but like, what are they really providing? Besides Choo Choo, I didn't feel like a strong sense of any of them really adding anything to the space or environment besides just scenic, like, hey, look at these familiar faces from prior franchises.
The sunfish is necessary in parts.
Well, I just like it didn't leave a strong impression. Is the main point I'm trying to say, and I feel like if it just like leaned harder into that direction and tried something very, imagine more weird ideas where it's like, hey, this level really requires you to do some interesting mechanics with the hamster or with Choo Choo or with each of them. Like it's in its own way, like try something different.
Man, if we didn't already have a title, Interesting Mechanics with the Hamster should be the title of this episode. I think actually along those lines, I think what would have made this work better for me is if it's because I kept reaching places with the previous animal that I already had, and it's like, here's 3 more to pick from. I'm like, the heck do I what? I don't know what's coming up. I don't know which one I need. I almost feel like this would have worked better if this was like the Donkey Kong approach, where it was just like, here's a crate with an animal, use it until, and then take the animal back and just be like, there you go. You needed the swordfish here.
And that's what I feel like Crystal Shards does. Then it does really well. Is you'll have a portion where you're like, okay, you hop on DDD's back and you just go smash a bunch of things, or you get your little Waddle Dee and you do whatever the Waddle Dee does. Like I think that works really well.
Does that let you keep them like until a fixed part within the game, or just?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, can we agree though that these animals or companions, whatever you want to call them, they have some pretty cute animations. I loved how, like, normally you get to pick from one of 3 animals on the screen. The other ones will get visibly jealous when you pick the other animal. The cat will get annoyed. Choo Choo will cry. Choo Choo has a huge crush on Kirby. All of her attacks, she's staring longingly into his eyes. It kind of looks like they're dancing with different attacks. Did you guys get to the disturbing scene where, I mean, I don't want to give a hot take. Actually, I do want to give a hot take. I'll just go there. Where Gooey sexually assaults her?
I missed that.
No.
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 The scene is that the characters are knocking Gooey back and forth. They accidentally knock Gooey into Choo Choo's flower and it gets crushed. And Choo Choo gets mad and starts yelling at the boys who are playing ball. And while she's facing away, Gooey licks her butt. And she gets mad and crushes Gooey. And then the other characters get nervous because she's like, ha ha ha. And listen, if you're my student and you just heard me talk about that, I am a Nintendo historian, okay? I am not being a creep. Nintendo put that in a kid's game, okay?
I don't think your students are going to see anything that contained the line "gooey into Choo Choo's flower" as a sentence.
But it's just like 90s game devs were kind of creepy. Like it's hard to get around it. I don't know. Different era maybe, but hasn't aged well for sure. I did like Mike mentioned Kine the sunfish, and in the Game Boy game he was kind of useless a lot of the time unless there was water. But I liked in this game he has like the most powerful attacks. Have you guys noticed that like Kine shoots giant fireballs and sonic booms, and I'm like, heck yeah, Kine. I don't know if you guys play Street Fighter.
I love
Oh,
Street
yeah.
Fighter.
So Dan,
Yeah.
the joke character. I always love when Dan gets like a crazy powerful attack, and you're like, yes, Dan, like let's go. I root for him.
I'm a Dan stan for sure.
But as much as I'm trying to gas this game up, it's boring a lot of the times. It's so easy. And like a picture I have on here is what looks like Kirby being chased by a boulder. I don't know what that is. It's like an imposter Kirby. I saw it several times in the game and I could never figure out how to get to it. But there's this boulder that's
Rolling Stone. Mike saw it.
it's the Rolling Stone, yes.
Hey, there was no stone in the Rolling Stones.
I want my money back. During the boulder chase level, the music doesn't get more dramatic. The screen doesn't shake. It's just the boulder's not even fast. It's leisurely rolling behind you. And I was like, if you made a boulder chase kind of a snooze, yeah, I don't know what we're doing.
Sounds like they needed to make some bolder choices.
Dun.
I feel like to your point of like it didn't seem too interesting. It wasn't a big kind of step for them. I like Kirby. I like the IP. I like what they do with it. I like that they tried weird things. I didn't think this one was leaning as hard into it. Felt almost like this was them being conservative. It was them being very reserved and safe. And it might have had to do with something with it being shadow dropped or stealth launched at that point. Maybe they were just like, hey, we've already put so much resources. Developments do often get pushed out and it may not have hit the window it was originally going for. And who knows? But I think these ideas exist, and this is maybe as close to like a transparency that we might get of some of those ideas.
It's like a half step, but it makes it feel very optional.
Yeah.
It's like, is it bad? No. Is it good? I mean,
It's indifferent. Yeah, I feel
it's not
indifferent.
bad.
Yeah, I feel indifferent towards it. I'm like, this is a part of the Kirby history. Okay, I acknowledge you.
It's almost like I have a feeling out of this of just like, I could keep playing this. Like I could.
I
I
can't.
don't know why I would.
Yeah,
Right.
And some of that is just there's too much that feels like I don't know what the point of any of this is.
again, I would make the argument that I feel like it's one of those, and I do this with movies often. I feel like games sometimes when you have there you can tell there's a special sauce when it gives this vibe of like you don't see them, it misses the mark, but you do see the potential of it hitting a mark, and you're like, oh, it has these pieces. If it just did XYZ, then it would have maybe worked. And I'm like, I saw that here. I saw bits of Mario world building elements. I saw bits of Yoshi's Island cuteness coming out of this, and I'm like, they're in the Nintendo wheelhouse. I know it's different development teams under that giant publisher, but I feel like they share. There's certain elements that they kind of cross between, and I feel like this could have been its own version of like a Yoshi's Island-esque. Like, hey, we have a bunch of cute, stuff going on. We have this familiar but different art style to us that's kind of sketched, kind of drawn, and it could have gone in that direction harder, but maybe wrong place, wrong time. And maybe this is the stepping stones for them doing it later on with like the DS and what was it, Canvas Curse?
Yeah.
With some of the ideas. Who knows? I feel like there's something to be said there.
Dreamland 3 floated and flapped so that Canvas Curse could fly, right?
Exactly.
And you mentioned, like you see like little bits of brilliance. Like if you guys got to the avalanche level, I don't know if you bothered to play this long, but it's a brilliant concept because there's this big avalanche, and once again, music's not scary, screen's not shaking, and I was like, it's kind of. But what's neat though is that the avalanche starts on the left side of the screen, and as you go through the level, it takes up more and more of the screen. So by the end of the level, you have just like a half an inch of screen left, and you're forcing the player to stay on the right hand side of a scrolling level. Means now I have much less reaction time to enemies coming at me, and I'm like, that's really cool. Adeline, the boss fight where she's this painter, Derick mentioned her earlier, I think, and she paints enemies and they come to life and attack you. And Mike, do you recall when in our first Kirby episode we showed you the commercial and it reminded you of something? The little boy draws Kirby and it comes to life. Do you remember what it reminded you of?
I was like, Gerald and the Purple Crayon.
Harold and the Purple Crayon, which not only is back in Dreamland 3, but is also getting a Zachary Levi movie coming out this year. You're strangely prophetic, Mike. Like your little jokes that you make. I also got to laugh, Mike, about the level Sand Canyon because Kurosh, that's a street in our hometown. Like,
Yeah.
we can drive down Sand Canyon pretty easily.
There are no pyramids there
There are no pyramids that we
that
know
I
of.
know of.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you guys notice any of the Nintendo cameo characters? So to get the heart stars, you have to rebuild Rob the Robot, or you have to kill a bunch of Metroid for Samus.
Go back to Rob the Robot. That Stonehenge as well,
Yeah, in the background, yeah, but in a desert.
which is interesting.
Yeah,
How do you? Okay, so
Kirby is a godlike entity.
that's right. You said it before.
the robot is this was one of the heart stars you said, right?
So the heart star is like the special requirement, and if you get one of them in a world, you can fight that world's boss. And if you get all of them in the game, you can fight the true final boss.
Okay, so in this one, like, what did you actually have to do to get like the robot stuff?
So Rob the Robot was built by a little 8-bit professor here. He's standing at the end of the level, and he's hoping that you'll bring him all 5 pieces of Rob the Robot. I only found his legs or his rotors or whatever, but his head, his torso, and his arms are also hidden in the level.
Okay, so that's like a find things on the level. What was the flower one? Like, this is what frustrated with those is I'm like, there's a bit of like you'll hear a noise when you're supposed to do something. And I would hear a noise sometimes and be like, well, I'm supposed to do something here. I'm like, I do not know what.
Yeah, the game lets you know when it's time to fulfill a secret requirement. It goes like, but it's super opaque. I didn't get very many heart stars because, again, do something with a flower, do something with an animal, or do something secret. Well, if one of your tips is do something else, that's not a helpful list.
Do something with a flower is not really helpful.
Usually it's you water them. One of the animals, if you have the broom power, it'll take a bucket and splash water. So giving water to the flowers in the ice level, you have to melt the flowers so they're no longer frozen. So use the firepower on it. It's probably really fun if you have the strategy guide for the game.
I feel like even if they actually did a cue when you did a thing right.
Mhm.
Sure.
Just be like, oh, that's the thing.
Would have helped.
Because sometimes you had to do it several times, I think. And just to be like, oh, that was that thing. You're going to have to do it more. It's like, that's like, okay, I've at least found it. But it's very tough to go through and be like, I don't know what happened there that was the right thing. Like, I have a heart star. I'm not sure how.
And a lot of times I could tell I was supposed to do something, but like I'm showing you guys here, this little fire enemy, which is a unique enemy and doesn't appear anywhere else in the game, I don't think. I don't even know how to get to him. It shows you he's in this little room, but there's no way in, no way out. I was like, I wonder if I had to like drop onto the rock and shake rocks.
Of course, there's always my way.
No, he's haunted mentioning us.
Oh,
But I don't know. Like this frustrated me because since I knew I wasn't going to be able to see the true ending of the game, I felt bad every time I didn't get the heart star. It made the game feel even more pointless because like, why am I going through this if I know I'm not? And thankfully, Nintendo Switch Online has an SP mode of this game where you can boot it up with all the heart stars collected just to see the final boss.
oh, okay.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, boot it up. I mean, Nintendo forgot about that feature with their more recent releases, but it's got an SP mode for this one, so I booted it up to fight the Dark Angel at the end. But I don't know though, that didn't feel great because I didn't earn it, and missing the heart stars. Like this game, would you guys agree this game feels like it's for kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirby games in general operate with that target audience.
But this one especially.
Yes, this one especially.
I mentioned that this feels like a kid's game, and knowing I was missing the heart stars made me feel like I was doing bad at a game for kids. That feels awful. If it's a kiddie game, I want to do well.
I wonder, like, I haven't thought about that in, I guess, in earnest of like how I feel when like I'm not the target audience and there's a bit of an ease to it. Do I feel difficult not 100%ing it? Yes and no. I feel like it depends on the execution of what it is that I need to complete. If it's things that are tedious or if things that are not, like you said, that are opaque in their presentation of how you get to them, then I don't feel so bad. I'm like, I mean, a kid would figure this out because in my eyes, they're just playing. This is like the only game they're playing and they're just playing endlessly. Whereas I'm coming into this with a goal and target in mind, and I'm like, where's the next objective? And if it's just like, oh, you stumbled upon it, and it's like, okay, well then I'm not gonna expect that of myself.
I feel like I would have wanted a bit more steering towards it. It doesn't have to be like, this is what you need to do explicitly, but a way to know that you're on the right path,
For the heart stars.
especially for the heart stars.
I would like more. I would have definitely say like in that vein, having more clear little cues and hints, akin to I remember listening to you guys' conversation with Derick on Pokemon Snap, and it's not like they would outright tell you that this is how you get Charizard or this is how you get certain angles and views, but as you experimented and played, you got cues that some things would change. And I feel like this could have used a bit more of that, of like, hey, doing these things like we'll give you visible cues and things to draw from.
I think it's a response time thing there, where you can immediately see what you did had an impact. It's fairly clear. Whereas with this, because it kind of does these mini things scattered in there as their own separate rooms, and it's not really towards the end, I feel like you actually know, either you get, oh, I have a heart star now or not. It feels like it's a lot harder to kind of have a causal link, so it doesn't feel like your exploration is doing something, even though it is. When you can't get that feedback, I think that makes it less useful, at least for me.
Well, and like Super Mario 64 had the names for each star you were trying to get. It would be like, oh, the lost penguin. And like, okay, I'm gonna look for I know I'm looking for little penguins who are lost.
The missing none.
A little text would have gone a long way in describing how to get these. Do we have anything else to say in criticism or defense of Kirby's Dream Land 3? I mean, it's a much simpler game, it has its moments, but it's sort of an odd follow-up to Superstar. I think we all agree.
Yeah.
It's a follow-up to Dreamland 2, I think. There is one thing that I do think is worth also noting we haven't touched on, since in the previous Kirby episode, you kind of brought me up to speed that the same darn tree is basically just like reused every time. And I will certainly say, to the credit of this game, having played multiple Kirby games, and I actually played this one at the end of the last Kirby episode because I thought we were covering it and we had removed it. So when I played it then, it's like, oh, I've seen this 3 times already. I was not expecting that tree to go all ent-like on me at a part of that battle. And you're like, that was not a thing I thought you could do. So I certainly give it credit to having a thing where it's like, oh, this is familiar. I know how this works. That's not how that worked before.
Yeah. The boss fights are repeated throughout the games, but they each have their own little take on it. And in Kirby's Dream Land 3, Wispy Woods can move. He starts walking towards you, and it's kind of unnerving, honestly, when he does it.
Yeah, it's something that it is nice to see something that can sort of go, hey, we're going to take the thing you're familiar with, but we are going to throw something in you are not properly expecting.
Right.
Like, occasionally movie remakes will do that, where like they play up a scene from the original, but they take it a different direction. So if you've seen it, where it works on its own, but if you've seen it, you're preparing yourself for what you know comes next. And it's like, that's not the next bit of this.
The one that does that best is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where, spoilers for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but like Sharon Tate doesn't get killed, and like the movie is building up to that moment very well, and you're cringing in the audience, and you're like, oh.
I actually think Pet Cemetery does this better.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen the any version of that movie, actually.
There's a couple scenes in Pet Cemetery that are pretty much like shot for shot recreations from the original, but they change it. So you can imagine a horror film that's leading up to a, something's there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a memorable moment in the first one, and they build it up in a different direction in the remake. And I'm like, didn't go well, but it's like, for me, it was like, I was not I was prepared for what I knew happened, and it didn't happen, and you've gotten me in a different way. So that is what that reminded me of, was just that, like, I knew how this was supposed to work, and it didn't. And that is a really good way for making something be familiar and fresh at the same time.
But on the other hand, though, that Wispy Woods dies so dang fast. Like, he was an easy boss fight. I just gotta tell you, because this was my last piece of trivia I never got to mention before, but there was a boss cut from Dreamland 2. It was a orca killer whale fight, and they ran out of time to develop the boss fight, but they included an Easter egg. There's a poster in the background that says orca as a tribute to the character they had to cut.
Oh,
He gets to have his moment in this game. It's Acro, the orca whale fight.
time to shine.
Yeah, literally with the Kine with the light bulb in his mouth here. Any final thoughts on Kirby's Dream Land 3, guys?
I feel like it is a part of Kirby history. It definitely educated me on maybe some of the things that I saw later on in the Kirby franchise, and I appreciate it for that. But as a game that I find entertaining or not, it was definitely on the not side as more so.
Mike, ready to move on to our rankings?
We're ready to go on to the rankings. We have lost Derick, so you'll hear the rest of us review it, but stick around all the way to the end, and we will get Derick's final thoughts on all of this as well.
Kirby and Choo Choo took their time and absorbed Derick.
Kirby and Choo Choo absorbed him. Yeah, Derick's in trouble. Well, so let's rank each of the games from today as a NintenDo or a NintenDON'T, starting with Kirby Super Star. Now, Kurosh, Kirby enthusiast, would you say that this is a game you'd recommend?
I would NintenDo Kirby Superstar.
Would you Super Nintendo it?
I would Superstar do it. NintenDo it. I don't know what I'm saying.
So we've come to have rankings of good games. There's NintenDo, Super Nintendo, or Nintendo 64, which is a must-play game.
I think in the Kirby pantheon, Kirby Superstar is a Super Nintendo 64.
Dang, yeah, it's top tier.
It is top tier, maybe not in any one game mode, but as a total overall package, I think it is some of the what I always attribute to of looking at any other piece of Kirby gaming experience. I always go back to what this offered and what this experience was.
I completely agree. Actually, Forgotten Land, the Switch 3D game, used to be my favorite Kirby game. But like just for this one game, I had 4 pages of notes and 60 Google Slides. The game is that rich in just value and content and neat things to talk about. I think it is Superstar, appropriately enough, also a Super Nintendo. It's just so good. It's a good game. Mike, you gonna keep our perfect streak, assuming Derick liked it too?
I'm gonna go a different way with this, because I find this game to be novel in a way that I feel like it's hard to say don't check it out. But for me, the novelty doesn't last long enough. So it's interesting to go, interesting. I'd say it's worth checking out to see it's interesting, but like I'm not terribly compelled to play more of it. And for that weird combination of novelty to it, but it doesn't really feel like it has staying power, I'm gonna say I'm gonna give this a Nintendo Virtual Boy.
What?
Is this a new category?
Yes, it is. Of like,
I'm here for the debut of this new category. This is
I don't
exciting.
like it. No, this isn't gonna stick around. Nintendo Virtual Boy. That's way. I'm an English teacher. That's way too clunky.
yeah, it's just it represents what I'm feeling with this. Where it's like it's hard. It's like this was worth checking out, but I'm not sure it's worth sticking around much for.
I always thought Nintendo or Nintendo. We never specified if you would beat the whole thing or I mean,
It's hard to say. Like, it's really a thing where it'd be like, try this for like 5 minutes and then just you're good. It really.
it's a Nintendo.
I
It's a
don't think it's
Nintendo.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
fact
It's
that my argument to what you're saying is the fact that you're saying try this. I stop
Yeah.
there and I say
Right.
you're wanting someone to try it. How long they try it is then now in the conversation of whether it's a Super Nintendo 64 or whether it's just a Nintendo
Personal
by itself.
preference.
it feels to me like I'm kind of saying you should see this, but I don't want to. But don't spend much effort on this. And that's
Are you telling me I should go to a Walmart in the 90s and try this on the demo with my neck craned up? Is that what you're trying to tell me to do?
yeah. I think that's that same realm. Yeah, enough that you can see like I've seen what this is like, but I'm not investing that much in it.
Kurosh, what about Kirby's Dream Land 3?
I feel like unless you're a Kirby enthusiast, I feel like this is a Nintendo. I don't think you gain any additional. There's much to gain from this. I feel like there's other Kirby experiences or other just Super Nintendo experiences or retro experiences to satisfy you. Yeah, this as much as I appreciate it for very just nuanced things. I don't think for I would give this a solid Nintendo. I would give this a Nintendo.
So I was interesting because I would have agreed with you until we played it together. But when Derick and I fired it up and we played 2-player mode, and GUI had more or less the identical abilities to Kirby. So I no longer felt like this tacked on, unneeded helper character. I felt like my own distinct player. And the game was even easier. But there's a certain genre of co-op game where it's challenge light, because you're chopping it up with friends and you're having a drink, and it's not about the gameplay. It's about like the excuse for camaraderie.
Sure, yeah, I could see that argument.
I would say because it's a nice, soft co-op game. Like, this is a game I might want to play with my wife because she's not a big gamer, but she likes Kirby and she doesn't like games that are stressful. But we like games we can goof around in together.
Yeah.
So, and part of me wonders like how much. Cause I mean, go back to the box art. GUI's right there on the box art. Is this way because this was intended to be that kind of game? A fun 2-player game, and if it was more intense or more involved, it wouldn't be as fun. Like, I don't think my wife would like Superstar necessarily, although she liked Robo Planet or whatever that one was called, Planet Robo Battle or whatever it was. That was a good one.
You're saying Planet Robo Battle, this one?
Oh, such a good one.
This is one of my favorite ones. I was saying.
I mean, look, you're coming back on whether you like it or not, but if they ever get DS games on Nintendo Switch Online, oh, it'd be amazing. Mike, my Kirby sense is sensing something bad. What do you think? NintenDO'Nt?
I think for me, I think it's Nintendo, and I feel even worse now hearing you talk about like, it's like it's relaxing, and I'm like, I got Kurosh and I like a game over, or not a game over, but like a level over because I died. So
In Dreamland 3?
yeah.
Oh, you suck.
No. It was the inputs. It was probably the latency in the inputs.
That was 100% me.
That was very much likely the case with it.
All right.
That like when looked in context, I very rarely blame anything outside of myself on this because I'm like, I am not good. There's certain points where I'm like, okay, even at my level.
Okay. And then at the end of the show, we will have Derick's takes on these games.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to call that game over for today. The final scores are Kirby Super Star, a Nintendo, and Kirby's Dream Land 3, a tie. So be sure to vote, listeners, on whether or not you think it's a Nintendo or NintenDO'Nt. We haven't had a tie in a while because usually we have odd number guests here, so I'm excited. Let's ski here. We really appreciate Derick and Kurosh for their time and for joining us. Before we go, Kurosh, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find your wonderful indie gaming content?
You can find me on YouTube and my social media platforms. You can find me everywhere at Cujo Prime, but on YouTube, it's youtube.com/@Cujo Prime. My show is called the KJP Show. And I like you were saying, I cover indie games. I celebrate and elevate them and all the developers. I have a few interviews I did a conversation with a friend of mine who I met at Comic-Con last year. And that's the latest episode I did, where him and I are we're both Iranian Persians. And we're playing the latest early access, The Rogue Prince of Persia, made by the Dead Cells developers. And as I'm playing it, we're having conversations in English about just Persian culture and gaming. But then halfway through, we just start talking Farsi for the remainder of the episode about just our history, or just having a conversation. So I was really excited to do that because he kind of inspired me to go this route with some of my work, and I have a lot of stuff coming out as well, so keep an eye out for that.
That's going to be excellent. And everyone, don't forget to check out Derick's content. He hosts the Underrated Movie podcast. And Mike and I have both been guests. Mike did an awesome episode on the movie Bad Times at the El Royale, which is a fantastic episode, a fantastic movie. And I did the opposite of that, which is the Lonely Island musical parody documentary comedy Pop Star Never Stop Stopping, starring Andy Samberg. Kurosh, you got a big smile on your face.
I love that. That movie is so good.
So underrated. It's such an appropriate place on the podcast.
Both of those are so underrated. I like that.
For both Kurosh and all of Derick's stuff, check the show notes. We'll have links to everything in there. So Derick is very busy. The stuff that we didn't mention explicitly, we'll have links.
Awesome.
And thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, you were a delight. We want to celebrate and elevate you. So please come back. Speaking of coming back, everyone, please join us next time when Mike and I will be rotating through the Nintendo Switch online catalog in our epic quest to research and review them all. Next on the Kurosh, you get it? Yeah. Mario Drop Puzzlers, including Wario's Woods and Yoshi on the NES, and Dr. Mario for the OG GB. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcheroo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, Discord, YouTube, TikTok, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and reviewing. And as always, thanks for listening to The Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone.
Hey guys, sorry about the technical difficulties, but I just wanted to come back and record my rankings for the NintenDO or NintenDO'Nts for both of these games. So for Superstar Saga, overall, I think it was fun, but it wasn't incredible. It was almost like when somebody comes over and they want to play Mario Party, but they just want to play the mini games. They don't want to do any of the actual games. It felt like this was a fun little addition, but it was lacking kind of the main substance. But it's still Kirby. I still liked it. So this one is a NintenDO for me, but it's definitely not a Nintendo 64 or a Super Nintendo, just a regular NintenDO. For Dreamland 3, I kind of had the opposite problem, where, yes, this one was a traditional Kirby story in this, that you just kind of went through and stuff like that, but it, like I said, it was pretty bare bones, and it almost feels like, in many ways, a trial run for some later, more beefed up Kirby games that we would get on some more impressive hardware. It didn't really feel like it changed anything or did anything. Honestly, if these were one game together, I might be a little more warm on it, if, you know, the controls were consistent at least. So yeah, with Dreamland 3, I mean, it's still Kirby. Kirby's still great, you know, how can you not love that little puffball? Like I talked about, the aesthetics of it are really cool. You know, we talked about the way it tricks your eye into the transparency and everything. So overall, I would say Dreamland 3, also a NintenDO for me. So both these are just, you know, it's like pass fail. These are both kind of like C's get degrees. So yeah, that's my final rankings on that one. Thanks again, guys, for having me. Sorry that my computer decided to crap out there, but looking forward to talking to you guys again soon. All right, take it easy.
Love you.
Jeremy loves his wife.
Got him.
So my don't love that. Don't love sitting back down and hearing the "got him" meme. So I don't know if you guys heard all of that.
We just heard "love you," and then Mike's like, "Wow, Jeremy loves his wife," and then Jarek's like, "Got him."